Are we ready to convene? Okay, lovely. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you. So we've finished off talking about a lot of the issues for land transport around some of the roading network, and now we're going to talk about some of the specialized areas. So we're going to begin talking about bridges. She says, hopefully. Why aren't you doing this? I did. Hold on the line, please, caller. Here we are. Okay. Why aren't you doing that? Yeah, we're just going. That's so close.
No, he hasn't changed.
Oh, great.
Can I talk to Bridges anyway when it comes up?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we've got a number of bridges, 41 in this 10-year long-term plan period. We do assess them every 3 years. Ones that are nearer the end of the life can end up being seen sooner in regards to an assessment. Oh, here we go. I'll let Vincy take away now that she's got to go.
Apologies, technical difficulties due to operator error. Okay, so obviously we have over 300 bridges that we're dealing with there. A very costly repair program ahead, as Susie said. We have some bridges that are over 100 years old and some are made out of wood. So what Susie has actually asked for in her activity management plan was to increase the replacement program to have 41 bridges and culverts over the next 10 years for this LTP, where normally they would do about 25. Okay, so that comes at a higher cost. Now, we've got the 41 in this next 10 years. After that, there's a much bigger wave of repairs that will be coming as the assets are coming to the end of their life. Please keep in mind that this is not about replacing every bridge. So we can be talking about repairs, replacing some components, and that's where the conversation about are there any potential rationalizations that we could do around our bridging infrastructure. Right now, what's in the budget is unsubsidized council funding to increase that program would be $6.9 million in years 1 to 3 to commence that work.
So is this new, or was some already in the long-term plan?
Probably a mixture of both. So we've, I suppose, as we collect further data and get more information, we then realise how big and bad the picture is. But so and the movement to a 30-year program has shown, through the infrastructure strategy that the next wave is there sitting for us to do. So this one here is one that we're doing at the moment. So
if you had to choose between unsubsidised roads and unsubsidised bridges, what would you choose? No, I'm just having you.
Very tough one. Who's going to take the calls on all the potholes? I suppose that's worth saying as well. Any cuts to the level of service, we're already probably around 70 to 80% of the CARMs we receive now through land transport are more around the level of service than an actual fault or issue. So a lot of the conversations we as a team are already having with the community of, I'm sorry, this is not a level of service we can provide. So it's a real tough one. So this is South Street Bridge. You'll be aware we're replacing it at the moment. The old wooden structure is at the end of life. We've managed to get a further 10 years out of it by doing component replacements. So there's some big beams, cool story about this bridge is that it will be replaced, it's being replaced now, the structure has been lifted in, and the old bridge is actually being recycled and has been donated for the Central South Island cycleway. So there's still components sitting within that bridge that are fine for light traffic like that, however accessible for trucks, they are not. So yeah, this is a great structure. So we actually got 8 tenders for the structure replacement, which is huge. You know, we get asked by our peers how we're managing to get so many tenders. The prices have sat under engineers' estimates, so we've managed to get good prices and a good quality of work that's being done at the moment. So we are certainly winning in that game, which is brilliant. And the bridge itself, so you'll see it there, it currently has the 2 piers sitting within rail corridor, which makes it very hard to get permission to go in and undertake maintenance to the structure. So the new structure, I suppose this is answers your question somewhat, Councillor Pye, replacing like with like. No, we're not putting piers back in. We are doing a single span so we can maintain from the top much easier. So that's an example of one that we're doing right now, and it's about $1 million to replace that bridge.
Yeah, and that's interesting because actually you can, if you look at the benefit, although, I'm fully supportive of that bridge being replaced, but with the light of the conversations we had, you can access both sides via road. So, moving forward, would that, is it necessary to replace that bridge?
Yeah, it was certainly an interesting conversation that we did have at the time of replacement, just noting potential for coastal inundation there and potential of transporting houses, etc. Current only other access is underneath the rail, which is limited in height, and our rubbish trucks currently can't get through the underpass. So the road crossing bridge was required for that resilient access.
Just for the rubbish bins, though, but maybe they just have to walk their wheelies out to the close to the cemetery. No, that's fine. Look, we've got 40 years odd of bridges ahead of us. My question is around, the skill set that's needed, design, engineers, all those sorts of things. We've just got a wave. Are we at the point where some of those skill sets should be in-house versus external? Because we're going to be using WSP, I assume, for bridge design, for this. All the Canterbury councils are going to have these same issues. So if we've got X amount of bridges, they've got X amount of bridges, should we be collaborating better on consultancy? Is it in-house resource, or is it a combined Canterbury initiative to look at a consultancy firm for bridge replacement? We've just got to be smarter in the way we do things, is what I'm saying. Are we thinking outside of the box?
We're basically doing collaboration now. WSP is bridge engineers for the highways, for us, for Ashburton, Mackenzie, here, most of the regional councils actually, well, most of the councils full stop. So we don't have a formal cluster agreement as such, but yeah, they are the experts in the field. They do offer low-cost solutions. We have tested it and using other consultancies, and we tend to get more Rolls-Royce type solutions, to be honest.
So my question is what's the competitor to WSP? There again, you've given me the same answer. Should we be looking at those skill sets? What exactly are the skill sets that we use? What would they cost us to have inside council versus what we're spending over the next 10-year period on that specific skill set? Can we do some analysis on that, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we certainly could look at that, but it's a structural engineer that we'd require, and they certainly don't come cheap. While we have a big wave of work coming, we'll need access to varying skill sets, probably not just one individual. We also do look at the opportunity to do design builds on our lower risk, lower flow options. So, where we're doing a box culvert replacement or something like that, so we don't always straight jump to WSP for that work. But I don't know, Andrew, you got anything else you want to add to that one?
Yeah, look, I know there's structural engineers that will specialise in, bridges versus something else, but, if we do some analysis over our spend on structural engineering, just currently what we're doing, I'm sure it's a pretty decent bill. So there again, I ask the question is, what's the cost doing externally versus paying to someone 200 grand, we might be able to rob someone off a good consultancy to have them, inside. That's the question that I'm asking.
Well, bridge engineering is a very specialist field, and there are limited people in the business for that. So, securing someone in Timaru would be quite a challenge, to say the least. But yeah, I think where the biggest savings are is being more innovative in the way you look at the approach. So, if you've got a bridge there, yeah, we always do look at a culvert. You may get to a point where we actually look at a ford instead of actually putting a bridge back there at all. So yeah, I think that's where your big savings are to be made there. Do you really need these as bridges? Is there other ways we can do it?
I get that. I guess my question is, can someone do some cost-benefit analysis on having that skill set? Because I think if you pay our external cost versus paying the individual to have them on staff, you could make a package quite attractive, I would have thought, to bring them here. I just think we need to do that analysis.
Okay, thank you. Associated with bridges, you often have other structures that can be of concerns. Things like your railings and your retaining walls, and they're not structures that come to front of mind when you talk about council property, council land, and what have you. But I can assure you, after the Canterbury earthquake, retaining walls became super important. It's when they collapse that you really realize their value. Now, there's quite a few retaining walls in the district. The issue that we actually have is the lack of data, because there hasn't been the resourcing available to really investigate all of these.
And what's the resource we need? Is it a structural engineer?
Good point. Yeah, there certainly is a gap in the data available, and the resource initially will be, some of them is unknown ownership. It's working out, is it a council structure or is it a private owner structure? So it's, yeah, a bit of structural engineering, but also just a whole heap of data capture and review of old town plans, etc. So more of a GIS type data officer position.
The reason why this is actually being brought up is because this is part of what we're actually looking at for the investment from council for, in order to maintain levels of service and be able to address our data gaps. There has been extra budget asked for in the activity management plan, which we will come to. Unsealed roads, our favorite topic. Okay, so when we're dealing with unsealed roads in here in the district, you're looking at over 750 kilometers of them, and 78% of those are considered to be low volume by Waka Kotahi. The data shows very clearly the largest users are heavy vehicles associated with the primary industry, and that includes forestry as well as farming. For the big milk tankers and stuff like that. It is the largest problem area for customer complaints for the roading team, and you have very low satisfaction survey results. Hasn't always been the case, but it seems to be more prevalent in recent years, and yet the level of service has not gone down in that time. So we're still grading the roads exactly the same as what we used to, but you're getting more complaints about that. The low-volume rural roads have one of the lowest journeys per year, and so they do a rating on the number of journeys on a road per year on average. And a lot of your urban roads are in the 500, 600, 700 a year. These roads are on 12, okay? So we're talking like very sparse, sporadic travel routes. However, they require the most road metalling, obviously, for the renewal work, and that's due to the high aggregate loss that's displaced either through the heavy vehicles or weather events. One area of concern is because a lot of the lifestyle block developments in rural areas involve urban people moving out to those areas and perhaps maintaining their expected level of service to still have rural, urban roads in their new lifestyle properties. That won't be all encompassing, of course, but there will be some cases like that as more and more people do move out for quality of life measures. And we have a lot of theories as to why customer complaints might be going up, but the reality is we need to look at our levels of service and our performance measures because we're not asking the right questions. We're not able to determine what it is they're unhappy with. It's just that they're unhappy. So we don't know if it's because of the potholes, because of the heavy traffic, is it because the shingle's been displaced, is it because they don't think the grader's coming often enough? So we need to do something around our performance measures if we want to keep this performance measure. It's not a mandatory one, it's one council uses for its own monitoring. And that will be, how can we improve the quality of the data that we get from the people who are answering? And you should know that people who actually answer that are unsealed road users are underrepresented in the cohorts or the sample sizes. So you've got basically a lot of, you have the squeaky wheel making a lot of noise. So not all road users obviously are taking part in the surveys, but, and you'll have people who live in the area. There's a higher prevalence and prominence in the national conversation about road conditions. So, you know, your base awareness could be up at any rate anyways. So I'm proposing that for the performance measures and looking at the questions that we're asking, we get better at asking the right questions so that we know what the problem is we're trying to fix.
Just on that, Vincy, do we ask the question if they're a regular user of rural roads? Or is it possible that we have people that don't drive on them regularly, not used to what the standard should be, answering those questions?
I think the latter is very probable, to be honest with you, and I'm not familiar with the survey because there's only one that's just going out now for resident satisfaction, and I can't off the top of my head, but I can certainly look into that. But it's worth investigating. I mean, Trudy in her time here has managed to actually give us some good cost savings with the way we're actually conducting the research now. And that means it opens up the scope to ask better questions. I've already talked about how, about the vulnerability of the roads. Wet weather gives you potholes and shingle displacement, high dust and dry weather, which causes, of course, breathing issues for the community. So the Land Transport Unit has proposed to do an intensive seal road extension to 90 kilometers of unsealed roads over the next 10 years. It does come at a cost to do that. It's about $500,000 per kilometer of road to seal. Is that correct?
Yeah, it somewhat depends on the traffic volume. When we've got heavies, a lot of heavies using a road, design the pavement thicker, so the underlying condition of the road. If it's a lower volume, heavy vehicles, but a high number of residences along that road, like Brophy Road, for example, out in Geraldine, then that would be cheaper per kilometre to do because we wouldn't need to design for so many trucks versus Rangitata Gorge, for example. So it is variable, but yeah.
So you have a few options about how you want to handle this. You can let the community decide if they want to increase rates to deal with rural unsealed roads because this is subsidized by Waka Kotahi. Or you can opt not to do the seal extensions and just keep the levels of service exactly, well, as a matter of fact, it won't even be meeting the level of service if we don't do that, will we?
Well, it won't decrease the level of service as such, but it certainly won't make any difference to the satisfaction of the unsealed roads out there and the types of complaints we are getting through and go through the media as well.
Yeah. And so the point I'm raising here is that if you choose not to do the road seal extension that's been asked for in the activity management plan, it will increase the risk of complaints. And so what that means is we as a council are deciding, or you as a council are deciding that you will not put the burden onto ratepayers to fund for these low-volume rural unsealed roads to be sealed. But when you have people who live on those roads or drive on those roads calling you, complaining and asking for that, that's where the tough conversation has to happen, that you back up the decision that has been made, because it will create an extra burden on things like customer services and the roading team if the decisions that are made around the table are not backed when you have the people calling you.
We are going to see in the AMPs, though, aren't we, the full 90 kilometres broken down with criteria, cost for each, and all that sort of thing, because it's not necessarily going to be in all 90 kilometres or none. So when we're talking about satisfaction, we're not necessarily going to be saying to this stretch of road or residents in this area that
We have identified the 90 kilometres of roads that under officer's opinion would be somewhat beneficial to seal for other outcomes other than road maintenance costs or those things due to complaints or heavy vehicle use or number of houses, those kinds of things. We haven't applied a multi-criteria analysis to it, and we could add an estimate cost on what it would cost to do those roads. But yeah, at this stage it's kind of broad brush. Here is a list of roads, here is,
I think we'd like to see that, though. We'd like to be looking at it, because it's not one big 90k project, is it?
Gosh, no.
So when it's broken down, and
I was going to say, the biggest length would be the likes of Rangitata Gorge for 10
Right.
kilometres, and the rest of it, the rest of those 90 kilometres sit across 30 other roads. So,
yeah, well, it would be prudent to look at each one of them. So we'd need to know the costs and the criteria behind each.
Can certainly add some work to that one.
And I think it's, what our community can afford. So, quarter of an hour ago, we were looking at the wish list is to double the amount of bridges. Now we want to increase the amount of sealing on our roads when we know an unsealed road is ultimately cheaper than having sealed roads. It's so two very high cost extensions to service at a time where we will get complaints regardless if the road is sealed if the rates are too high. So, yeah, big conversation.
Big conversations.
Big wish list.
Right. And this is the workshop for that conversation.
Bring back the horse and cart, better for climate emissions as well. No. As you based on your efficiency, it's probably not.
There are other options.
Just be aware too, and when you do seal roads, then you're going to have additional depreciation long term to actually replace those roads in the future. So there is some ongoing costs there, and would have to increase our road resurfacing program as well, so on longer term. So there are, it's a tricky decision. It is more, I guess, customer service driven than asset driven.
And that would be just one thing that I'd be mindful of. We'll still go out and talk to people that were aware of a seal extension list from 50 years ago and ask why we haven't done it yet. So you kind of publish these lists at risk, I suppose, that then it becomes hey, this was considered then. Why has it not been done already? So we certainly can do that work. We've done most of it already, and we can include that in the activity management plan. No problems at all.
I kind of think some of the dilemma is, you know, we're potentially going to spend that $57 million on a theatre that some rural people would propose that doesn't benefit them at all, and I know that's not the case, and so how do we get that balance of where we spend our money and who it benefits, and it's kind of part of a bigger question, isn't it?
And that will be part of the activity funding analysis that we do, where we break down line by line. We look at the benefits, okay? Now, council can choose, I beg your pardon.
So just a quick, in response to that one, we have done some high-level analysis in the past, and yeah, basically urban ratepayers subsidise rural ratepayers when it comes to roads, yeah, because just the sheer cost, because how much rural road we've got, yeah.
And coming down to costs, there are other options council can choose. Rather than just doing a general rate over everybody, you can choose an exacerbator pays type of service, and that's where you get things like your heavy vehicle companies would pay a targeted rate for the use of their vehicles being on those roads. A targeted rate towards particular landowners where those vehicles are going to for goods delivery or pickup.
Can you target a trucking firm specifically?
You
No.
would charge them an exacerbator pays things a fee, if I recall.
No, that's actually not in the legislation to be able to do that. They pay the road user charges and they are allowed on the road. What you're talking about, yeah, there was an option many years ago, but it was like a regional fuel tax type situation.
It's the same,
Oh.
the same.
Yeah, but that's no longer available.
I beg your pardon, I'm out of date.
Targeted rate is definitely available, yeah.
So, I mean, we talked about the other day, where you could apply it as the, rating differential on forestry property. You could increase that to help fund roads, yeah.
Yeah, and Trudy might have a bit more up-to-date knowledge, but in some districts like Southland, they do look at the roading rate and via the land usage, to your point, forestry, sheep and beef, or dairy or whatever. They still got that model, and that's then how they try and build in some of that use factor, if you like, or utility and consumption of the asset.
Some of that would be more part of a full rating review versus even LTP. So even in saying that, I would like us to get to a point where we're having a discussion for this long-term plan around the forestry differential, because I think that's something we should be looking pretty closely at.
I'd want to be very careful before going down that route, because I think that flood in 2019 showed that even though the local land protection, it benefits the entire community. And yeah, I just warn a bit of caution.
So history of the forestry one, I remember last LTP or one before, we had someone from up the gorge or somewhere came to us presenting the need for a sealed road because they were due for harvest. So, yeah, which we, that's right, yes, which we declined. And so, it's a little bit about user pays, isn't it?
One thing that I'd be interested to discuss at some point would be how we would weight various outcomes, because each road that would be up for a seal extension has different outcomes that we'd be trying to achieve that aren't our technical outcomes at all. They'd be around that dust a little bit. Well, safety is technical, but a bit on safety, number of dwellings. So we've obviously got current policy that doesn't cover a number of those things at the moment. But yeah, there'd certainly need to be discussion, the likes of maybe an ILM to develop what would be council's preferred weighting criteria that would be applied. We've got quite a technical spreadsheet developed already with all of it, but it's, okay, so what?
Look, I think we need all the data, but until actually the government comes to the party, seal extensions personally should just be off the table, in my view.
So now that we're talking about levels of service, they've remained very consistent for a number of years within the land transport activity. However, with increased costs, the weather events, the increased demand due to the economic growth, and customer expectations, there's a big strain on the current budgets. So the existing budget cannot cover the existing levels of service anymore. It's been stretched too thin. Susie has requested the additional $5 million of funding per year to increase the work on a number of the things that we have discussed in this presentation, and also to maintain existing levels of service. And it's worked out to be about an 8% rate increase per year. That's working on how our rates work. If the funding's not obtained, specific services, which we can discuss actively right now, would have to be cut or reduced to be able to stay within budget. So the funding for years 1 to 3 was about $82.1 million. So that's an extra $15 million than normally would have been asked for in years 1 to 3. The work program submitted to Waka Kotahi is $146 million. As you know, they fund 51% under the FAR rate for their approved programs. We don't know if they're going to approve all of those $146 million, $46 million worth of programs. So if they did approve everything, what Susie is asking for is council to pay for that anticipated shortfall. So you would be paying 56% of the proposed work program of the $146 million. That's depending on if it all gets approved. If they don't approve everything, then either the work program needs to be adjusted, or we come to council asking, do you want to keep those work programs in? And it'll be coming with the begging bowls asking for more money.
Yeah, so just noting that the difference between those two is our improvements program. So that's our what we call low cost, low risk, our Road Zero, our regionally significant projects, the likes of resilient access to the port, so Heat and Hayes rail crossing, working with Kiwi Rail on that one, new Washdyke Link Road, so connecting Meadows Road to Seadown Road is also a regionally significant project, and then implementation of the active transport strategy, so keeping on with the work that we've been doing under the Transport Choices funding and the Better Off funding that we've had available as an extra, so another $2 million per annum sitting in there, and then just the small network improvements that we do day in, day out, you know, small roundabouts, rural intersection realignments, safer crossing points, all of those things that you see popping up around the district. And noting that, yeah, it is just for the approved program, and as per every cycle since forever, the RLTP, Regional Land Transport Plan, the NLTP, the National Land Transport Program, and our LTP never line up, and we don't get the information from Waka Kotahi generally until we've got to the point of rate strike. But be accurate to say, wouldn't it, Andrew, of what they are actually going to fund. So it does put us in a very difficult situation. We were told by Waka Kotahi staff before Christmas last year that we would have indicative allocations in March. I believe that's been held up for political reasons, and we do not have those indicative allocations that align our program to the GPS. So we are walking in a dark room, knowing that the expectations of our community are high and growing, and that the level of service we are providing currently through multiple avenues, different contractors and our personal staff is a challenge to keep up under existing budgets. We're required by Waka Kotahi to fund cost fluctuations at rules set by them, which currently sit at 16 to 17% for our maintenance contract. We are exceptionally lucky, or we're not lucky because there's been a lot of hard work that goes into it to make sure that we get a lot of tenderers in for the work that we do put out. We ask a lot of specific questions to try and get the right contractors to tender the work, and we are getting prices that are actually below engineers' estimates, which is a fantastic position to be in. But yeah, I suppose the key is we're trying everything, we're stretching everything as far as we can, but we're now at the point where we can't really continue to do that, or we can't continue to do that and provide the level of service that we currently are. And like I noted before, 70 to 80% of our customer requests that we get through are for work that doesn't fit within our current provided level of service. So it may be going some way into our decreasing satisfaction from our customers.
Susie, so my question is then, if we have a budget request for 1 to 3 years, so you put it in and 12 months later you find out if it's approved. But to me, like every business, you've got to live within your means. So it makes me nervous that we're anticipating something and we're not going to get it, because that's how you fail. And so my initial reaction is we only do what we receive funding for. We're not a bank.
I agree, and so we have made some assumptions in our income stream based on the historic practice from Waka Kotahi, that will get somewhere between 10 to 20% over and above what we've been getting for the previous 3 years. So the income stream for grants and subsidies matches roughly that percentage, so it doesn't actually match the full 51%. We haven't made the assumption that they will fund 51% of the program, because they haven't in the past. So yeah, we've made that assumption on grants and subsidies that it is lower than 51% of the total cost that they'll be giving us.
Then you design your program around what you know you would get funded for, and once it comes in, you reprogram and say, we're not doing any of that. So you'll have a list of programmed work, and when you don't get funded for it, it gets slashed. I don't know why we're overthinking it. You just can't do it.
I agree, unless now government come to the party, we're not in the position to be increasing unsubsidised work anywhere.
Yeah, so particularly in the, sorry Andrew, just quickly, but particularly in the improvements, that's exactly what we do. We say, cool, there is no funding for that. But when we come into the operational and renewal budgets, that's where we need support and decisions from, not today, but decisions eventually from this table around what the level of service is going to look like, because it is difficult conversations continually with the community about the level of service that is affordable by that community.
Yeah, just to point out, if we elected to go to that, where we only spend what we're funded for, that would mean a significant cut in the level of service, because we have been topping up, I guess, over the last 9 years. So over those 9 years, and it has actually been slowly growing because we keep getting less from Waka Kotahi. So just be aware that it would be a significant cut in the level of service, not just what we're talking about here. It would be almost, stopping grading, stopping just about everything in that respect. So we are, that is a decision that was made by council, that they didn't want to see that cut in the level of service, and that we would fund above what Waka Kotahi give us, because that is really only the minimum we get. Do not be concerned about the 146 million, because we always aim really high. We know damn well that we're never going to get that funding. We've got more chance of winning Lotto than we have of getting that funding. So, even though we don't have a ticket. So yeah, we always have to aim high, and we have to, just like in the regional transport program, we've got quite a lot of wish list projects in there as well, and we always aim high there. So yeah, we will come back. And the 82 million is the realistic figure.
Okay, this concludes what we actually wanted to talk about in roading, so I'm going to take the opportunity now to remind councillors around the poll everywhere that was sent to you. Here we go. The link was sent to you to actually look at the big issues for the community and for you to actually be able to rank them. What I'm going to ask you to do is, in your tables of 3, knowing what we've just discussed about roading, you have the ability to go in and change your answers if you think you want to actually reprioritize, or you have the opportunity to say, actually, I think maybe we need to tweak something or add something in there. So what I'm going to invite you to do is, as a workshop, you're going to discuss with each other the things you just heard about roading, and what's really critical, will it change any of your priorities that you've identified? Some of you have not done this yet. And you have the ability and the time to do that now if you wish. But really critically, the discussion that was just had, that if we stop subsidizing the government as we have been for the roads in here, that's going to be very significant to this community. What are the key messages, and how are we going to go about delivering those to your community members? Because remember, this is your LTP, and you're the ones who front this and front these decisions. So we need to talk tactically how you want to go about that. And what's the ongoing message that we want to be given to this community? We understand, everybody knows cost of living. Everybody else is tightening their belts. If you're going to be advocating, so's council. How are we going to package that up? So I'm going to encourage you, I'm going to give you about 15 minutes to actually talk amongst yourselves, do the poll if you need to, and then we're going to come back collectively and have that open discussion from each group, what you would like to contribute to that.
I haven't filled this in yet. When I opened it, I got a little bit confused when I saw Theatre Royal and other bits and bobs already in there, because they were already in the long-term plan last time. So I wasn't really sure why we're going back.
We're talking about do you think are the biggest issues for this LTP that we must deliver? And the Theatre Royal, as I understand, you still have another meeting in November that has another.
Yeah, I mean, to your point though, is when you get to LTP document, is it something going to open and be a big issue? Well, it shouldn't be, because actually either at that point we've decided, perhaps if we haven't decided, then it will be a big issue, but if we have decided, it might just be business as usual, deliver on the project. And so when we talk about big issues, is that actually the things that we're going to talk about with the community so based on that, I would say, depends which direction that meeting takes, but possibly a no, because we've already had that conversation a couple of times.
And keep in mind, when you're out there talking to the community and you're actually saying, we're not going to do this, this, and this, as has been pointed out, they are going to say to you, but you're spending $58 million on a theatre. So how are you going to phrase that conversation when you're having it with the community? Because they will raise it with you.
I think they all understand that that's loan funded versus rate funded. Vincent,
Yeah.
that'll be fine.
Yeah. Keeping in mind for a lot of these other things, you're going to be loan funding. Okay, so I'll leave you for 15 minutes. Is it okay? We'll take an adjournment for the live streaming for the next 15 minutes while you're in committee actually discussing amongst yourselves, and then come back to live streaming when we're having the open discussion. Thank you.